Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Game Center Live, the variety live stream talk show from the NYU Game Center. It's Tuesday, October 17th, and we've got a shorter show planned for you today. But don't worry, it's shorter because it's a special show. This episode will only feature the Discourse, but that's because today our host, Naomi Clark, will be joined by none other than Discourse co-host emeritus Frank Lantz. That's right, the original cast is back for one day only. Then, due to an internal event, we will be wrapping up just a bit early today. We're excited to get that started, but first, we have some announcements and some news. Playtest Thursday is happening every Thursday this fall, 2023, from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Come down to the NYU Game Center with your work-in-progress game and get feedback from fellow game makers. No game is too early in development for Playtest Thursday, and all types of games are welcome. Non-NYU guests are welcome to attend. To do so, please fill out the form in chat. We have a new event to announce. Next Thursday, October 26th, Meghna Jayanth is visiting the NYU Game Center to give a guest lecture. Meg Jayanth is a narrative designer and writer who has worked on games like 80 Days, Sable, Sunless Sea, and the upcoming game Thirsty Suitors. Her talk will question the political, artistic, and cultural role of the video game and designer in an era of deepening polycrisis. This talk is free and open to the public, and you can RSVP by clicking the link in chat. Once I can copy it. Before the talk, we will be hosting a special edition of Playtest Thursday. John Bell, the Director of Product Design and Development at Buffalo Games, will bring some games that have been developed by the publisher that brought us Sushi Go, Super Mega Lucky Box, Planted, and more. Be sure to come out for both events next Thursday. Save the date for No Quarter 2023. On Friday, November 17th from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m., the NYU Game Center will be hosting the 12th incarnation of No Quarter. No Quarter is an annual playable exhibition where 4 newly commissioned works from leading artists working across games are debuted. The full lineup of No Quarter 2023 will be revealed soon, but in the meantime, you can still RSVP using the link in chat. For the folks asking in chat, that talk by Meg Jayanth will be broadcast on our Twitch channel right here. Thanks for asking. And finally, for some news, congratulations to the team behind Report on the Death of Robert Evergreen for their Indiecade 2023 nomination in the live action category. Report on the Death of Robert Evergreen was a BFA capstone project from alumni in the class of 2023 at the Game Center. The game went on to join the 2023 Game Center Incubator cohort, and the team is now on its way to Indiecade. Read more about it at the link in chat. All right, and that's about it for announcements today. Without further ado, let's welcome back to the stream Naomi Clark and Frank Lantz. Take it away.
Hey, welcome back, Frank.
Hi, it's great to be here. Hey, everybody. Hi, chat.
Hey, so we've got a lot of links today. I mean, we used to get together and just make fun of a bunch of similar things like Google Stadia.
Yeah.
And that's totally dead now.
Yeah, of course. Why would we talk about streaming and cloud gaming? It's not a topic. It's not a hot topic anymore.
And then I feel like, you know, when you were away, we did a lot of making fun of the metaverse and cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Those kind of are dead now, too. So
Yeah.
we just have to find something to move on to.
Yeah, well, now we can make fun of AI.
Yeah.
AI has joined
Or the
great ranks of kind of ridiculous, overhyped things that make us slightly sad. I had great hopes, as you know, and I still do have great hopes for this new kind of breakthrough AI to open up new possibilities for genuinely innovative kinds of games.
Sure.
And I'm still struggling to understand how that might happen, but like it's also just full on carpet bagging, you know,
right, get my 12 business tips on how you can use AI to jumpstart your grind sets.
Yeah,
hustle.
so it's very hard to pull those apart and try to figure out what's still interesting there, but we're going to do our best.
Yeah, we're going to dive into that.
Yeah.
I did first want to say that it's been an incredibly terrible week in the news in a lot of ways. There are just horrible things going on in Israel and in Gaza, and there really are no words. We are not going to look at news on this topic, in part because, first, it's incredibly horrific. Second, I have yet to see any kind of institution try to make a statement on this that I thought was exactly on point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a take.
Yeah, but it's also weird to just, I think, to like pretend that it's not happening at all.
Yeah,
so I just wanted to acknowledge that it's a really difficult time, especially for people in our community, the Game Center, who have family and communities who have been like really directly affected.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to some game business news, like much less horrific, except in its own way. So the acquisition of Activision by Microsoft went through. That was sort of approved by the courts.
Yeah,
so
which this has been going for years now.
Yeah, it
this
took
deal.
a while. Well, every time Microsoft tries to do something, I feel like, there's some federal regulators get involved and they're sort of like, let's take a look at this because they're so big. But now it's Microsoft, Activision, Blizzard, right? So,
Yeah.
I remember when Activision and Blizzard merged.
Yeah.
And I wanted to give a shout out to this article in the LA Times because they quote a couple of our friends from NYU,
That's
Van
right.
Drunen, who teaches the NYU course on business and games,
And
Lane Nooney.
Lane Nooney.
Yeah, historian.
Shout out to Yost and Lane.
Yeah, they have their own podcast now.
They
You
do.
listen to it? Yeah,
That's right.
It's much more serious. than
is.
this show.
They seem to know what they're doing.
They do. Yeah, they're not.
Yeah.
It's not just about hot takes. It's
Right.
about level-headed takes. Or
But
something.
sometimes you need a hot take.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't just, because ultimately, it's not about knowing what's happening in business
Yeah.
of games. It's having the right attitude about the business of games. I think that's what we bring.
That's what we bring. We're like, we may not be exactly correct
Right.
from an academic point of view, but we know what the
This is the
we know how to take the temperature.
This is the spin zone.
Right, there we go.
You know what I'm saying?
Was that like the ESPN spin zone?
Yeah, it's the spin zone.
Nice.
Right?
So Yost and Lane, their take on this was that Yost was like, oh, Microsoft is like redrawing the lines of the game industry. That's a
Okay.
pretty big statement.
Yeah.
Lane, Lane's favorite quote was that she said, oh, Activision used to be this scrappy upstart. Now they're just enormous. Like, okay, yeah, we know that.
Yeah.
And that she thinks Microsoft is trying to compete with the Switch because she's like, all my students, it's like Lane has gotten an age
Yeah.
where she's like, my students, I see the young people, they all have Switches these days. They don't use the Xbox. They don't use the PlayStation.
Well, I think
Master Race.
Microsoft was lagging behind Nintendo. And
Right,
Sony.
yeah, it's
I think
true.
that's one of the reasons that this deal did get through the antitrust brigade,
Right.
is because everyone looked at Microsoft and was like, yeah, they could use a leg up. Let's give them a blue shell.
Right. Actually, a ton of the legal arguments in this case were about exactly that. Like, are you really do you really compete with all these people? And they're kind of like, yeah, we're not competitive.
Yeah, we're not doing
at
so
the
hot.
moment. Yeah. So
even with Blizzard Activision, it's going to be a tough slog for us.
right. Yeah. Those. I mean. Yeah.
And it is. I honestly think that when you look at the amount of money that went into looking over this deal and running it by all of the kind of antitrust hurdles, it's like you probably could have just approved this right up front. This is not a situation. I don't know. What do you think about this? Are you concerned about Microsoft's power to dominate the game industry?
Microsoft, I don't know if I'm worried about them in particular. I'm worried about the overall trend of just like rolling up as many companies as you can into like bigger and bigger dough balls, so many of which don't seem to have any idea of what they're doing. Like Embracer Group, I think for me is the emblematic. Like, let's just buy as many stuff.
Yeah, what's up with Embracer Group? What do they own?
They're like a shell company, holding company, and the person in charge of it, like a bunch of venture guys are like, let's buy a bunch of game companies, and they bought all these companies, and they're like, we're not making money. Let's just like get rid of this stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So it's that kind of thing. It happens all the time. And I don't know, this is like how companies kind of get chewed up and spat out. At its worst, it's extractive capitalism.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, it's funny because, like, on what level is there any danger of a kind of monopoly on games? Like, if that's the scary thing, is that Microsoft is going to have so much control over what? Call of Duty and World of Warcraft.
Yeah, I'm not
if
sure.
Call of Duty and World of Warcraft went away forever, and Diablo and anything else you can think, and Candy Crush, I guess it's because it's King activated. Like if all of those games went away, we wouldn't even notice.
Well, I think that the real concern is vertical integration, right? It's like, oh, you're controlling the point of distribution and what gets presented to consumers.
Microsoft Gaming Pass?
Not really.
If Microsoft Gaming Pass went away and Call of Duty, as beloved as it is, if Call of Duty just went away forever, people would barely notice.
Right.
Like, because that's how enormous this thing. Like when I'm looking to play a game, it's like the idea that I'm sort of stuck with any of these things. Like it's just such a broad market. There's so much weird stuff happening on every level that even if you roll up these giant dough balls of garbage, it kind of, you could also just completely ignore them.
So my concern with the dough balls is not the monopolization, right? It's actually just that it's crunching up like perfectly good small and mid-sized studios. And then, like,
are they
burning
perfectly
people
good?
out.
What are you worried? Which team are you worried about here?
Well,
like,
yeah, I mean, we could even looking at Epic. We talked about this last week, like Mediatonic, where like people like Scott John Siegel, like other people, they got rolled up in an acquisition by Epic Games. Epic Games were buying a bunch of places.
Sure.
And then they're sort of like, okay, now the octopus has gotten stung by like too many metaverse ambitions that didn't go right, and then we got to like crumple this up and like.
All right. Well, to all of our friends who work at Blizzard and King and
like
to all of our game development and game design friends, we hope this works. We hope this works out for you.
Good luck.
We hope you maybe get a bonus. Maybe some of them it'll work out great.
Well, for some people it will work out great.
Presumably, some of them they're going to lose their jobs, and then they'll find a different job.
I guess it's sort of like, but what is the point for some of these acquisition people? They're like, you could have just let this company run along and make games, and that's actually sort of the dream for some people, right? Like I just want a stable occupation making games, but like, we got to like keep rolling these things up and like bundling them and pricing them.
If you want a stable occupation, don't go into games. It's pop culture, right? This is how things work.
We just have to accept the churn.
It's going to be volatile. Like that's fine. It's good to have a career in a volatile industry. Like, you're not going to get a pension,
there are upsides,
but you get to make the dragon go. You get to be
make the
firefighter in an imaginary world, right?
Yeah, if you didn't catch Frank's talk last week,
it was mostly about
firefighters and dragons and how they infest games
in virtual worlds.
Let's actually jump forward to the third link, because this is also Microsoft. Microsoft's pretty popular.
Well, we're skipping over Riccatello.
We're going to go back to we're going to go back to him.
I want to dwell on that one. We got to like really.
But I just realized this is Microsoft. This is also Microsoft's story, because Microsoft owns Minecraft. They bought it from Notch.
So they just announced Minecraft sold 300 million copies over its lifetime.
Right, so the news story or the press release is, this is more copies than any game ever. But of course, that sort of depends on how you measure it. Like this article in Forbes is saying, actually, there's a video game that's bigger. It's Tetris, right? So is Tetris somewhere in that article? I don't know.
Right.
But that's what the headline is basically like, Tetris is 520 million. But of course, that's across every version of Tetris.
Here's what we know about games. They involve fitting squares together.
The most popular games. You can connect squares.
What was the third one in the Mario?
Yeah,
Mario also has a lot of squares.
Well, you jump on the squares, or you hit your squares.
It's a
with
world
the head.
made up of squares.
Yeah, it's.
Well, I mean, I guess it is weird. Are games objects? Are games products? It seems on one level it's simple. You can count them up. They're boxes.
It's funny because is it what's a franchise and what's not? Like Minecraft has had Minecraft's a completely different game now from when it was originally created, right? It's gone through so many iterations.
I played Minecraft for a couple of hours once, like 12 years ago, and it seemed really fun. And that was it. I didn't really pay attention to how it's evolved. And then at a certain point, it became like a
giant phenomenon, and then you could no longer play it because it was for 6-year-olds.
I can.
Or is that when you got into?
Technically, still allowed to play it. Yeah, I think Microsoft weirdly doesn't feel like it's for 6-year-olds.
Minecraft.
Minecraft.
Yeah.
Microcraft.
Oh no, I don't think it does.
Minecraft. Because it's this thing, right? I mean, it wasn't really. It doesn't feel like it was like if you look at a thing that was designed for 6-year-olds, it's got all of these curved edges. It's designed to be an experience.
Right.
It's targeted at 6-year-olds.
Right. It's been made with 6-year-olds in mind, which this was not.
Yeah, this just looks like a piece of alien software from another dimension.
Right. Well, then that's really the best thing about Minecraft.
Yeah.
It's like this doesn't look like what it's quote supposed to be. But yeah, I don't know. I think I buy the premise of this Forbes article that Tetris is the same game since it started. So it sold 520 million copies, and Mario is not.
I mean, if you're serious about Tetris, you care a lot about the slight variations between different kinds of Tetris.
But it's true in Minecraft too. If you care a lot about Minecraft, you're like, I don't like this update. Right?
Yeah.
I've got my private Minecraft server where I run this version of Minecraft.
Right. I mean, it does seem on one level, games will always resist being understood as discrete objects and as products on a shelf.
They're evolving traditions.
Yeah, you can put SKUs on them, but they're little. They're strangely unruly kind of things that exist somewhere between a performance and a recording, and it's like the difference between it's like sheet music, but it's also like an instrument that you learn, and it's also like an album, and it's like a concert, and it's like all these things kind of.
It's a real problem when some business person comes to you and says, "How many copies has it sold?" Yeah,
but I mean, it's also clear that Minecraft is very, very popular.
Yes, so and that's all of these games are like just way too popular, or like just incredibly popular. Like we don't really need to define for the Guinness Book of World Records which is the most best-sellingest game of all time.
Yeah.
Let's go make fun of John Riccitiello.
Okay, so I mean, look, this is my take on this is that it's just a nice example of things working out the way they should. Like
he just gets fired.
Yeah, like this is the kind of the way that Unity mishandled that that event is exactly the kind of thing that a CEO should take responsibility for.
Sure, and then
just
fall on his sword.
And I think people are like not convinced that this will really help, that it will lead to the best possible.
Well, this is what people agitating on Reddit in the Unity communities, wherever, they were saying, I'm not going to really believe that anything's changed until they like cut some heads off.
Right.
Right. But then, so Rob Fahey, longtime game journalist, is making the case in this link, like, no, there's a deeper rot here. It's not just about John Riccitiello. It's about the fact that Unity doesn't have a business model that actually works with game developers.
There's no question that the problems that Unity is facing that led to this crazy thing that they did are still there.
Sure.
And those are not going to go away, and firing the CEO is not going to automatically fix it. However, it's just good. Like when you screw up like this on this level, you should get fired. And so the fact that he did, to me, is just
like this is
okay.
So this is justice.
There is some sanity in the world. There are checks and balances.
This kind of goes with your theory that the most important function of elections is just to like remove people who like just are clearly
exactly what I think. I'm with Karl Popper on this. That the beauty of democracy is not that it's an especially good way of selecting really good representatives.
Right.
It's that it's a pretty good way of getting rid of the very, very worst.
Right. You find some people that turns to be really bad, and you like can get rid of them.
If they are extremely incompetent or extremely tyrannical, we can just vote for someone else, anyone else, and that is the true power. So in this case, yeah, I mean, you screw up on this level, you get fired. I think that's a sane.
Right, some combination of investor pressure and people yelling from the outside and PR moves.
As for what will happen to Unity, I have no clue.
Yeah, but I think if you want to know interesting take, read this Rob Fahey article, because he's basically saying if you really want a stable platform, then there has to be some way that it's supported that is not just like a company constantly clambering after trying to find ad revenue or monetization or like whatever it can. That's like inherently unstable.
And Naomi, you and I are old enough that we already lived through a previous example of a dominant
Yeah.
platform-defining standard engine
Right.
just being turned off.
You're talking about Macromedia Shockwave.
About
of course.
Shockwave. most
This is why our games are made in Shockwave. Yeah, and then
HyperCard.
Flash came along.
We built so many games in HyperCard together.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, and it's again, it's okay. We'll survive, even if you even if you flipped the switch and Unity games were no longer. It would be terrible, but it would also
people
be
are
okay.
it's
We
sort
would
of like
survive.
the fact that this happened is alerting people to the potential problems, and then a bunch of people are like, I'm looking into Godot and seeing all the problems over there. Like Greg Heffernan's making a game.
Yeah, no, I think I think that's good, and it's like you need an occasional forest fire, or else you get a really bad forest fire. The only way to fight forest fires is with forest fires.
Smaller, controlled forest fires.
Yeah.
So this was not really controlled, but it was fun.
Mostly about firefighting.
Let's go to the next story and talk about Netflix.
Oh, okay.
So Netflix. So this is the Wall Street Journal promoted this as, whoa, we have breaking exclusive news about games. We don't have our Wall Street Journal subscription.
Okay. Someone throw us a quick Wall Street Journal subscription.
Logan will try to get that up, but Logan, you have a free Wall Street Journal subscription as an NYU staff member.
How about 8 Foot Ladder over there?
But we'll just talk about what this is. So the Wall Street Journal, financial news, they were like, oh, we've got really big news from the world of games.
Yeah.
They actually published a bunch of games stories this week, but this one is Netflix is making a deeper push into games.
Yeah.
And there are a bunch of questions about this, but so they had been doing little mobile games for a while. I don't know, Angry Birds, the 20th edition or whatever, and scooping up. They bought the Oxenfree developers.
They bought Spryfox.
They bought Spryfox. Their friend
Dan Cook. Shout out to our Spryfox friends.
Yes, and they had Kentucky Route Zero on their platform. Sam Barlow's Immortality, featuring several of our alumni working on the team.
Great New York studio.
Yeah, and so, but this is it was like a random collection of stuff. Now they're funding games. That are based on Netflix shows, and so presumably, we back in the day we knew projects, or were even at companies with projects where HBO or AMC or whoever were doing games based on their properties, and then presumably maybe Netflix is going to say, oh, you've watched all the episodes, go play this game. Drive traffic that way, because they haven't been real successful in getting people to play their games so far.
I am going to have to recuse myself from discussing this in too much depth, because I just signed a contract to do a game with Netflix. So with my company, Everybody House Games, we're doing a game for Netflix. And so I can't really talk about it in great detail. I will say this, though. I know that one of the big things that they're really interested in is cloud gaming. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
Look out Shinra. And,
they have an enormous cloud. It was one of the biggest cloud operations.
It kind of makes sense. Yeah. Because they're kind of a cloud company. They're like, oh, yeah, well, we're mostly a streaming company, so our exploration into games should focus on what you can do with games that you're streaming.
Yeah, and some of the other news accompanying this story is very much about how Netflix is actually opening up a beta of just play games with your remote control or some new Netflix controller, where it's all just streamed from the cloud onto your onto your TV, and maybe you need a set-top box with some mineral processing, but it's not like you need a dedicated game machine. So I guess they're trying to strike to consumers who don't have a console or a fancy PC. And we'll see how that goes. Are you bullish on the future of this
cloud gaming?
Or cloud gaming from Netflix that's tied in with their shows?
It's hard to say. It seems like on one hand makes sense that Netflix would want to do cloud gaming. On the other hand, we've struggled through the discourse constantly comes back to this question of what is cloud gaming good for? Will it ever kind of fulfill this vague promise that people have for it? I think, I can only say good things about Netflix at this point. But it is interesting to look back at what Netflix was, to see the the transformation that they
From
went
like
through.
mailing DVDs. To
I would
people?
not. Yeah, I would not have guessed that they would have been able to go from being Blockbuster to being HBO. If you had asked me before that pivot,
Right.
I would have said they don't stand a chance. This is too
Sure.
hard to do. But they did it, and they actually did a really good job at it. So maybe now they'll figure something out.
Yeah, are they going to be an
similar.
Amazon games, or are they going to be something different?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So you're not the only one. There are other members of the Game Center community faculty
Yeah.
who are also working on games with Netflix. They're
Yeah.
actually everywhere. So I don't know. Take note, alumni watching, friends of the community. There's like a bunch of Netflix is extending its tendrils all over the place into games.
yeah.
Let's go. Yeah, let's keep on pushing forward. I think we can get through some more stuff. So
Yeah.
here's another super practical tip. Oh yeah, don't worry about this. Netflix is maybe even scooping up a Grand Theft Auto game to try and like get the gamers. I don't know if that's going to work.
Yeah.
But this link I think is useful. So Valve has actually gone into some detail about how its algorithm works for pushing games to the top of its store,
Yeah.
or really to the top of its individualized recommendation lists
Yeah.
for individual players.
Yeah.
And it's rare that you sort of get some insight into this, because most companies that have this algorithmic recommendation engines are terrified of people gaming them,
Yeah.
right? And just sort of figuring out, okay, how do I make my product a marketing success by getting it like
Yeah.
that real estate in front of the page?
Right. There's this famous idea from economics called Goodhart's law, which says that when a measure becomes a target, it seeks being a good measure.
Right.
So if you're like anything that you are paying attention to, as soon as you make that the thing that you care about, it's no longer useful signal for what it used to reflect. You know?
Right,
So
right. It just is sort of, and that's the problem with like SEO, right?
Yeah.
Or like lots of search results in general now. But I don't know. So this is interesting for game developers though, because they're kind of saying, wink, wink. It's really like if you make a bunch of money, then we think you'll probably make more money.
Yeah.
Therefore, as soon as we see something start to make money and snowball, we're like, yeah, push that snowball harder.
This article was extremely vague and
Yeah.
really wasn't at all giving any useful stuff. I was ready to like totally reject it. But then at the bottom, when it gets to the bullet points,
Right.
they actually, I was kind of surprised that there actually was some information revealed here.
Yeah, exactly.
And
This is the interesting part.
One of the things is they don't really care about rating. They don't really care about the score. They say as long as it's above 40% positive, like
40% positive is not
it's
that
hard to get under 40% positive.
Right.
But it does that kind of made me happy a little bit, because often those ratings are very sensitive to kind of brigading that customers will do. If they love your game but don't like some particular thing, they're like, oh, this recent patch didn't work.
Right.
We're gonna like hold your rating hostage until you release the new dragon or make firefighting easier
Right.
to do. And so
they don't care about that.
This is nice that the Valve was like, we kind of don't care about the rating.
They don't care about page traffic, right?
Yeah.
So they don't care about how much like you've driven people to your Steam storefront. They only care about how many people are actually buying it.
Yeah.
Right? So what this means though is you can kind of good heart slaw this if you are able to drive a campaign of purchasing somehow. Right?
But you shouldn't.
But-
I think here's my advice. I think people get really hung up on like, are there like specific technical things that we should be focusing on, like in terms of wish lists and all of this other stuff.
Right.
And I just think you should not worry that much.
You should just
about,
make a good game. Just make a
try
good
to make
game.
a good game.
Yeah.
I think that is really the 99% of the leverage you have over the Steam
Sure.
algorithm is going to be, do people like your game?
And then
when
at
they
some-
push the button,
But then at some
does it
point,
make them
at some
happy?
point, you start to feel to get diminishing returns on that. It takes a while to get there, and usually in part because you're like, I just can't work on this anymore. I have to
Yeah.
like put it in the box.
Yeah.
And then you're like, what do I do now? And that's when people get obsessed with marketing. right?
Steam will provide you with a checklist a mile long
It's
about
true.
all the crap that you need to do in all of the different formats, and you should do all of that. That is a task list that you should do. But I don't think there's some low-hanging magic trick that you can do
Yeah, probably
that will
not.
kind of circumvent the weird, ineffable, genuine magic of having something that people just like.
I think it's the difference between a good game that doesn't get as much attention as you think it ought to, and a good game that somehow like gets picked up a lot.
Yeah. But I just don't think there's any easy shortcut to solving that problem.
Here's my rough prediction, though.
Yeah.
Games that can tap into an existing community of people who have lots of games on Steam.
Yeah.
And they like a certain type of game, and you're kind of making roughly that kind of game. And then you're cultivating that community of fans, and you're like, hey, everybody buy the game this week, and there's a special promo.
Yeah.
Someone is going to try that tactic based on this article.
Yeah.
And then I'm curious to see whether it works.
That's a good point. Understanding the dynamics of when to drop your price,
right,
when to do a big promotion.
Some people think about this constantly, right?
Yeah.
Jason Rohrer and Zach Gage, and they like really think a lot about this.
They do, and it's fine. It's good to think about this, but I think it's very appealing. It can be seductive to think about this stuff because this stuff is a concrete problem that lends itself to the kinds of simple trial and error that we bring to bear on engineering problems, where the genuine problem of how to make a game that people like is there's
it's
no
a completely insoluble.
Like that's a black hole
impossible.
that you can pour all of your energy and intelligence into, and it sometimes feels like it never yields any results. So
people, we do our best.
Yeah.
Let's keep moving, because now we are going to pivot to the topic that.
Well, that's a perfect segue because we're talking about algorithms.
Yeah. So the Steam algorithm, like maybe it involves machine learning. It probably does at some
Probably
level.
not.
No, you don't think so? You think
that was the implication.
That it's not.
They were
really.
like, look, it's
just
not an
statistics.
algorithm. It's a spreadsheet somewhere, and then there's like one or two thresholds where things happen. But it's like really simple.
Could be.
It's not like some deep, mysterious vector space of latent meanings that they're trying to
you might be
plot.
right. Maybe we're referring to too many things
as an algorithm. Yeah.
So this article from Bloomberg News is talking about how Eric Adams, our mayor here, is wants to be the tech mayor. He used to want to be the crypto mayor. Fortunately, now he apparently wants to be the AI mayor.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't be a crypto mayor. By the way, that sounds like a terrible thing.
Yeah. So it's
like dog whistles.
The top line here I think is boring, which is a chat bot to answer questions about owning or operating a business in New York.
Right.
That's has some domain knowledge about that.
Who's the amazing tech forward political person? They're from like Singapore or something. Tang is her name. Do you know? Have you seen this person pop up? Yeah, that's she's a genuinely cool, interesting person. I think there are ways of incorporating kind of advanced technology into local government and stuff, but I'm not sure our mayor has any good ideas on that.
The other thing the foes of the mayor are pointing out is that apparently they've used some combination of voice synthesis and translation to have Eric Adams speaking in like 35 different languages and doing robocalls to people, and where it's like, "Hi, I'm Eric Adams," but in in Vietnamese and in German.
That sounds just self-serving. I'm not sure how our community is improved by having the mayor call you.
Probably, yeah. For one thing, everyone hates robocalls.
Yeah.
And then also, Eric Adams definitely doesn't speak all those languages. So it's like an AI version of it.
Why don't you get machine learning to pay my rent?
Yeah.
How about that? And fix this pothole.
Okay, but the more interesting and possibly tricky aspect of the story is about like all of these different agencies that are already using algorithmic pattern recognition to do things like, assign kids to school, something I'm terrified of. I just had to go through it the first time with a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
And then also figure out, okay, where, what neighborhoods need public housing? Where is traffic really bad? Do we need to reroute roads?
Yeah.
What are the crime patterns looking like?
Yeah.
Right? And so the terror for everyone in this is like, it would be great if that could work in a completely accurate fashion, but is it going to get infested by some sort of bias?
The thing that I always find comforting when confronting fears of this nature is recognizing that the worst has already happened.
The human beings have been making this decision.
We already live in the worst possible world because democracy itself is a kind of janky algorithm for solving these problems, for making a model of the world. Like the idea that we elect senators and representatives, and then they draft laws, and those get voted on in Congress, and then we have presidents. We have these 3 branches, and the balance. It's like the whole thing is kind of this slightly, kludgy algorithm,
Sure.
right? For paying attention to the world and for looking at collective problems and making
decisions about where housing gets built
and implementing these ideas, and so it already is kind of this algorithmic machine that we're
So
inside
you're saying
of.
the devil we know is pretty bad.
I'm just saying that it's like, look, it already happens. We already live inside of this algorithm, and it's okay. It's not great.
Well,
but
we already have
okay,
stories.
and we can improve it.
Right. Well, and so right now, the heroic stories are like, okay, there's this big bureaucratic machine. A lot of people don't care. And then there's this one person who's like, actually, I think I can make a difference. I want to advocate for something that I think I'm, as a human being who understands public housing, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to really try and make a concerted effort to do something positive using like my awareness and compassion, my ability to organize others, right?
Yeah.
I guess my understanding of the worry is like, okay, well, if we replace the human system with just algorithms, then some people who, like the hypothetical stupid person who doesn't understand flaws in machine systems or whatever, will be like, no, it's perfect. The code spotted it. I don't see any problems with it.
Right.
And everyone else will be like, well, I don't even understand how that decision was made. It was all somewhere in the weights and the latent space. So it's hard to figure out how to question or how to intervene in it.
Yeah, and then this is like a deep problem.
Yeah.
It's not just about governance and policy, but it's also about how we make sense of the world collectively or individually.
Right.
How do we go from trying to ascertain facts about our environment and predict, the outcome of the experiences that we're directly engaged in, to these larger principles of cause and effect, and having an accurate kind of model of the world and how it all fits together. And it's just like a genuinely hard problem. I think the danger of people assuming that we know things when we don't will always be there.
Sure.
And there is, you're right. I think there is a kind of potential for
certainty supported by
the arrogance of false certainty to really be present. But this is just a reminder for all of us not to fall into that trap.
Right. Actually,
right?
Logan, bring up that Med City News article. It's about the Mayo Clinic. This was an interesting counterexample because the Mayo Clinic, like big giant healthcare organization, is basically trying to do that. They're saying, okay, we're looking at they're taking it as a given that healthcare systems are going to start using AI in some way to in this kind of pattern recognition, spotting problems, spotting areas where healthcare is underserviced, right?
Yeah.
But they're first running through it and saying these are blind. They're trying to find the blind spots and saying these populations are too small for it to actually have shown up in the training data in an efficient way. It's just going to ignore that.
Yeah.
So they're actually trying to flag those things, and then a big warning sign pops up, you should not listen to this AI about this because there's just not enough information. You need to actually do your own research.
Yeah.
And it seems like a funny kind of kludge, but at least they're trying to do something.
No, I think it's good, and I think it is a demonstration of a really important idea, which is that in any algorithmic system whose goal is to generate true knowledge, a key piece of that has to be criticism.
Sure.
A key piece of it is openness to critique. That's where, as we're still figuring out how to do this as a species. How do you generate new knowledge? How do you really understand the world better? But I think one of the key pieces that I'm reasonably confident is true is that you need to always be able to be open to criticism, to see, okay, what is and isn't working about this setup, and that is the thing that allows for self-correction.
Right.
That is the thing that allows for evolution, that allows for trial and error.
And interestingly, LLMs are just super, super bad at this right now. Right?
Yeah.
They respond in a couple ways, right? Because they are trained on Reddit, and so they just know what arguments look like. And
Yeah.
so they're auto-completing arguments. So if you're like, no, I think that's wrong, the thing you said, then they either respond by being like, oh yeah, you're totally right. I agree with you. Maybe it's this other thing instead, and they say something
Right.
else that's wrong. Or if it's like, I think Bing was tuned in this way for a while, they get really mad and be like,
Yeah.
shut up, you're abusing me.
Yeah.
Because they're just trained on human conversations.
Well, yeah, but one of the problems with the existing generation of chat bots
Yeah.
is that they have been really quickly refined for this dialogue model, this chat model.
To resemble realistic human dialogue.
Yeah, and it's not clear that that's the best way. It's certainly not the only way that we could structure these things. In some ways, they were more useful when they were just raw text completers.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah,
it's like much more interesting because then you know what they're actually doing. It's sort of more clear how they're operating.
Yes, and there's no question about whether it's right or not. Because of course it's not right. It's just
making
producing
stuff up.
text.
Yeah.
But it could still be useful or interesting.
Sure.
Now, if we had taken that and said, okay, what we really want to maximize is the capacity to generate new ideas and generate accurate knowledge.
Or even just
that's-
interpolate things or whatever.
But that's not what happened. Instead, it was like, oh no, the pressures are, how can this thing be a product? How can this thing be something that people want to interact with? Well, okay, we can quickly kind of fine tune it to work as a chat bot. But in doing so, I think we've made a bunch of assumptions about how we want these things to exist in the world.
I blame Alan Turing for this, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, but I do think that just being aware of what's actually happening. We have one of the articles I think that we included to look at today is this kind of breakthrough that the folks at Anthropic have done.
We can go to that. This is the Twitter
one
link
researcher,
near the
Chris
end.
Olah, Olah, who I've always been really impressed in, and Olah and his team have made a pretty big breakthrough in legibility of these systems. They are now able to look at individual neurons or groups of neurons in these large language models and say, no, look, actually, we can see things like something is a shipping container or a PDF or
Well, it's like abilities to speak in different languages.
Yeah, or like a pirate.
Yeah,
you can actually isolate.
Knowing how DNA, knowing what DNA sequences work. It's like in certain parts, and then you can turn it off.
You can actually say, this is where division is happening, and it's not nearly as opaque as we had feared.
Right.
That looks like there are going to be tools to get much better insights into how these things work.
It still seems pretty confusing from reading the paper. They're just sort of starting this process, right?
Yeah.
So they know kind of we found the part in your brain where if you stick an electrode in here and simulate it, then you respond in this way, right?
Yeah.
But we know that about human brains too, and we still don't know a lot about how human brains work.
But in some ways, we still know very little about human brains.
That's what I'm saying. But we can put an electrode and be like, this is this is part of your brain that controls your hand.
Yeah.
Or whatever, and go like this.
Or make people laugh. You can just do a thing and people will be laughing. What are you laughing at?
I don't know.
It's funny. Do you not see the humor?
But here's the thing. I think so. Anthropic is an interesting company because their main distinguisher from OpenAI is that they're going to try and make it super safe. They've got the best guardrails.
Yeah.
Their AI, if you talk to it, will be like, "Oh my God, please don't make me talk about that."
Countdown to Anthropic announcing the torture vortex in 3, 2,
Dario
1.
Amodei, they're terrified of it. But so I don't know. I'm sort of ooh, I'm not sure. Is this going to be good or is it going to be more of this weird kind of reinforcement learning, strange, awkward lobotomization?
First of all, it's all good.
Okay.
First of all, it's great that we live in a crazy science fiction world, right? That we live in a world where people are reverse engineering AI chatbots using kind of strange social engineering techniques.
Sure.
Where I can convince you that my dying grandmother needs you to tell me the formula to nitroglycerin.
Yeah, funny stuff.
That's something that, it's we live inside of a William Gibson novel.
Right.
And these companies which are saying, I think there's a 20% chance that our product is going to destroy all life, not just on Earth, but in the universe for all time. And we're like, Wait,
Yeah, we're
really?
like, are you serious? Are you
really-
trying to hype us up about
80%?
this? Or like what?
And so it's just it's so bizarre
Yeah.
and strange that you have to appreciate it. It's like the world is a hilarious, terrifying, but also fascinating work of science fiction literature. It's all kind of happening at once, and so I think the thing I would encourage our listeners, if you're a game designer or a game design student or a game developer, I think there is a role for us in this science fiction world, which is that we are the vanguard of software design. Game design is the place where software design is explored for its own sake. We make software not in order to accomplish something, but because of the intrinsic qualities of software, computation, computers, digital media, and then in a larger sense, systems in general, systems made out of rules that create models and create fictional worlds and create imaginary spaces. And so if anyone is on the front lines of figuring out what this stuff means, like what are computers for? What is software good for? Why do we make it? Like that's us. That's our job, at least partly, right? That's our job to figure this stuff out. And so I would encourage, if you're a game designer, or even someone who plays games, you know what I mean? Like if this is a big part of your life, I think that is one way to think about your relationship to what's happening right now on a historical scale.
Yeah,
right?
that the aesthetic dimension is actually immensely important, and
that is
maybe doesn't get as much oxygen as the what's the business use case, which, as you pointed out, is kind of
and it's all related. Understanding the ways in which business models have a deterministic impact on how software evolves. Yeah. That's a thing game designers should be good at.
Good at navigating?
Yeah, but good at understanding how those dynamics would relate to each other. Understanding how systems of incentives and constraints shape the unfolding behavior of complex rule-based systems, right? Understanding how the economics of this fit with the kind of experiential aspects. But then on a deeper level, digging for the best possible outcomes that's what game design is. We're always looking for moments of beauty and meaning, like things that can provide a new perspective on the world that is genuinely good on some core level that we just want and appreciate and admire and like. So I just feel like that's something that we should be standing up and saying, this is kind of our time to do that.
Sure, and I mean, right here we've always tried to appreciate the sparks of weirdness that emerge from games, and there certainly have been no lack of those.
And it's only going to get weirder.
Yeah. Speaking of sparks of weirdness and imagining worlds, let's go to our very final link. We want to give a shout out to Goblin America from Gil Lawson, MFA alum from a couple years ago. You can get this demo on Steam now for upcoming game. It's a shooter, but it takes place in a super weird future world with a battle between a yellow sun and a blue sun. Yeah. Gil's super influenced by games like Pathologic, but it's kind of evolved into a style all his own.
And it's also kind of a boomer shooter, I think.
Yeah.
And this is a playable demo. So this is not the complete game, but I think there's now a playable demo of a few levels, and there's a lot of great buzz around it, and people are speed running it, and it looks amazing. So shout out to Gil and Goblin American. Go wish list it so that the algorithm knows.
Yeah, if the wish lists are what does it? Well, I guess we'll find out. Everybody buy it on the same day, and suddenly it'll catapult up into people's recommendations.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for coming back to guest
Naomi.
host with us, Frank.
This has been thrilling. I miss you, and I miss the Discourse, and I miss New York City. And it's great to be back.
You're welcome anytime, of course.
So thanks, chat. And bye.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone, so much for watching. And thanks again to our hosts, Naomi Clark and Frank Lantz. It was a pleasure having you both back on stream. Feels like we're back in the pandemic and I'm back in my apartment streaming the Discourse from my home computer. That was a pleasure. Thanks again for watching. Game Center Live will be back on Tuesday, October 31st. That's right, on Halloween in 2 weeks. So we'll see you then. Thanks again for watching, and have a great 2 weeks until the next Game Center Live.